Whenever we singers are working on learning new songs, there's one really, really important question that we have to ask ourselves, and that is, which key should I sing this song in? Because the key that we choose for the given song will have a direct impact on aspects of artistry and technique, and even possibly vocal health. And so it's a really critical question. And we ask ourselves that question because we're all a little bit different. We all have different range capabilities and different vocal weights and timbres, and we're of different genders, and we have different skill levels. And it's really important for us to accept the fact that we are not always going to be able to sing a given song in the original key. And refusing to accept and acknowledge that fact can lead us to making some pretty poor choices when it comes to the songs that we're singing. So a couple years ago, I attended a masterclass taught by Andrew Lippa. Andrew has written a number of musicals, and during this particular masterclass, this part of the masterclass, he was working with a soprano who was singing one of his songs, and he at one point stopped her because she was clearly struggling with this particular section of the song in which she was supposed to be belting. And he asked her, "Well, why are you singing this song in the original key?" And she looked at him as though to say, "Well, it's your song, and that's the key that you wrote it in. And don't you want me to sing it in the original key? And am I not cheating if I don't?" And he must have read her mind, because he stopped her and said, "No, it's not cheating if you don't sing the song in the original key. There is a reason why we're able to purchase sheet music in multiple keys for a song." And he proceeded to use an analogy of purchasing clothing, and he said, "I buy medium-sized shirts because that's the size that fits my medium-sized body. A large wouldn't fit me and a small wouldn't fit me. They wouldn't be flattering on my medium-sized body. And so I buy a medium-sized shirt." And for some reason, that particular part of the masterclass really stuck with me. And personally, I've never been someone who's been averse to raising or lowering song keys, but I do know a lot of singers who are. They have it in their heads that somehow they will be viewed as inferior vocal technicians, inferior singers, if they raise or lower a key of the song. And they refuse to acknowledge the fact that their voices simply are not the same as that or those of the original singers. And when they insist on singing the song in the original key, they're not allowing their voices a chance to shine. And they're very likely placing undue pressure and stress on themselves in a performance situation, because now, in the backs of their minds while they're performing, they're worrying about whether or not they can hit that high note or that low note. They're worrying about that section of the song that's right in their break, sits right in that spot. Or they're worrying about that belted note and whether or not they can produce that effectively. And in a performance situation, we don't want that kind of distraction. That's the time when we should be focusing on artistry and really connecting with the song emotionally and connecting with our audiences. We don't need the distraction of worrying about our technique or worrying about embarrassing ourselves. And so when we're selecting the songs that we're working on, we also need to look at the key signatures. And we need to pick the key signatures that are going to flatter our voices, that are going to fit them to a T, and highlight the very, very best things about our voices, and not draw attention to the things that we need to develop further. Now, before I proceed to outline my process for determining the best key signature for a given song, I want to share two quick things with you. The first is that the perfect key for this song over here is not necessarily going to be the perfect key for every single song that you sing. And that's because songs are all written differently. Song melodies are all written differently. They will have different ranges, the highest and lowest notes that you'll be expected to sing in those songs. And they'll also have different tessituras. The tessitura of a given song melody is where the bulk of that melody is written, which part of the range. And we need to really take a look at several factors when determining the correct key signature for us, for our unique instruments. And so even though the key of E major might work perfectly for this particular song here, it's not necessarily going to work for every single song that you sing. And the second thing to remember is that the perfect key for this song today is not necessarily going to remain the perfect key for that song down the road as your technique continues to develop further. So be open to periodically revisiting that key signature and adjust it according to your current technical skills to where you're at in your training. All right, so now we've picked a song that really speaks to us. And now we have to determine whether or not we're going to keep that song in the original key or raise or lower that key a little bit. So the first thing that I do, and it might seem like a no-brainer, is I have my students sing the song in the original key. And that gives me a lot of information about the direction in which we should take that song. Are the high notes too high? Are the low notes too low? Is there a way that we can adjust that melody somewhat, sing it a little bit differently, tweak it a little bit, so that we're not losing the integrity or compromising the integrity of the song, but we're enabling that singer to sing the song in the original key, because apart from the occasional note here or there, that song overall sits really, really well in that particular singer's tessitura. And we need to be flexible and open-minded like that, because we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. If the song is otherwise working and sits really, really well in the singer's tessitura, then there's no reason necessarily to change that key if we can make little tweaks on either end. But sometimes those high notes are just unreachable, even with further technical development. Sometimes those low notes are just not going to work. Sometimes there's a particular section of the song that just is not working. Let's say it's a section that the singer needs to belt, and that singer's belt technique is just not there yet. It makes no sense to try to continue pushing and pushing and pushing and risk vocal injury or strain. Instead, it's a wise thing to lower that key, even temporarily, until that singer's technique develops further. And that's okay. Again, we need to be good to our voices, and we need to accept that our voice, when where we're at right now technically, it's not necessarily the same place where that original singer is. So now that the singer has sung the song in the original key, we have a lot of information and we have a good starting point. Finding the right key signatures for the songs that we're singing isn't rocket science. It's actually really easy to do, so long as we're open-minded and we're listening to our bodies. Listening to what our bodies are telling us, listening to what our voices are telling us. Sometimes I think we get it in here or in here, we get so stubborn that we're so determined to sing the song in the original key that we turn off our ears and we stop really listening to what our bodies are telling us. So when I'm working with students and I have them sing the song in the original key, I start to lower the song by a half step or raise it by a half step at a time. And we proceed to work down, fan our way out from that original key, depending on whether or not we think it's too high or too low to begin with. And as we're making our way down by half steps, what will inevitably happen is we will get to a given key where that singer's voice will all of a sudden just sort of pop. The very, very best things about that singer's voice suddenly start to shine. All the qualities, all of the technical skills, everything just sits right. And that student will tend to agree. Not because I'm saying this is the right key, but because that student will also feel and hear it. And so sometimes we can treat the song a little bit like we would a vocal exercise in which we sing it in every single key until we find a key that truly flatters our voices, that fits those voices to a T. And one other thing that I'll sometimes do is have the singer sing the song a cappella. Because when we sing a song a cappella, we generally default to the key signature that we're most comfortable singing in. Now that could work for or against us, right? Because sometimes we default to what's easy, not necessarily what we're capable of doing, but what's easiest for us. But we can start with that. And that gives me a good feel for what the singer is confident singing, which key signature he or she is comfortable singing in. And I'll sit down at the piano and kind of fiddle around until I figure out which key signature that singer's singing in by default. And we'll go with that, at least initially, and then we can always revisit that key signature later. And again, this comes down to confidence and comfort. The last thing that we want to do is set foot on a stage and feel less than confident with our ability to technically execute that song. And so when we're trying to determine the right key signature for a given song, we need to try things on for size. We need to be open-minded and be willing to explore various key signatures. We need to find ultimately what is going to flatter our voices and what's not going to highlight our technical or artistic weaknesses. And we need to ask ourselves a lot of questions. We need to ask ourselves whether it's realistic for us to be able to sing in that key. Are we realistically going to be able to sing that high note in a way that's artistic and technically impressive? Is that a realistic goal for us? Is it a matter of further technical development, something that we can see happening in the near future? Or is it something that's really going to take many years of technical development? All right, it looks as though I'm out of time, but thank you so very much for joining me today. I really appreciate the fact that you've tuned in, and I appreciate all of your support and encouragement. That includes those of you who've subscribed to my channel, and if you haven't done so already, please consider doing so now so that you'll be notified every time I post new videos. And if you need help in determining the right key signature for your songs, please feel free to leave some questions or comments in the comment section below, or message me on the SingWise Vocals Facebook page, or even email me at Karyn@singwise.com. That's Karyn @singwise.com, and I'll do my very, very best to help you. Take care.